Open the safe. Michael Williams' voice tore through the penthouse like a gunshot. The sound bounced off the glass walls, echoing over the skyline of Chicago, flashing with lightning. His hand slammed against the steel vault behind him, a massive, gleaming slab of silver that seemed to hum under the storm outside. "Open this safe, and the 100 million is yours," he roared, his breath thick with whiskey, his eyes wild. "Any of you? Now." No one moved. Not his assistants. Not his security team. Not even the board members huddled near the minibar pretending to check their phones. The only sound was the low growl of thunder rolling through the skyscraper. "Hello, everyone. Tell me how you all are feeling today. Trust you're excited to jump on the story fully. Before that, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Let's make the video to go viral. Now let's continue." Michael laughed. The kind of laugh that wasn't really laughter at all, just a sharp, bitter noise meant to remind everyone he was still in control. Pathetic, he spat, his voice cracking. "All that education, all those salaries, and not one of you geniuses can crack a box." The lights flickered. Someone coughed. Somewhere deep in the building, a vacuum cleaner hummed faintly, the sound of ordinary life trying to continue in a place ruled by madness. Near the doorway, James Liam, the janitor, stood frozen. His mop dripped water onto the marble floor, each drop echoing louder than the thunder. Beside him, his 14-year-old daughter, Linda, clutched a faded purple backpack and stared at the scene in silence. Michael didn't see them. He never did. The man who owned half the skyline couldn't be bothered to notice the people who cleaned it. But Linda saw everything. Her wide eyes tracked every movement, the trembling glass in Michael's hand, the way he staggered toward the safe like it had betrayed him. The air in the room felt too thin, like the whole building was holding its breath. "Open it," Michael muttered again, this time almost pleading. "Someone, please." He turned toward the window, his reflection fractured by the lightning, half man, half ghost. Linda glanced at her father. He shook his head slowly, but she didn't look away. She couldn't. Something about that vault called to her, not because of the money inside, but because she knew. Sometimes, a single act of arrogance is enough to change everything. And sometimes, the person the world ignores is the one who remembers it all. But to understand how the janitor's daughter ended up here, standing in a billionaire's office during a storm, watching a man lose everything, you need to go back to where it all began. The Williams Center was more than just a skyscraper. It was Michael Williams' shrine. 80 stories of steel, glass, and ego, piercing the Chicago skyline like a monument to one man's hunger for power. The building's walls breathed surveillance, cameras at every corner, key cards that tracked every movement, elevators that required palm scans. Even the restrooms had biometric locks. Michael called it security. His employees called it paranoia. He trusted no one. Not his executives. Not his partners. Not even the engineers who built his safe, the custom Voltex X9, imported from Switzerland and reinforced with titanium bolts. He'd had the company sign non-disclosure agreements, then personally oversaw the installation, barking orders as if the vault were a beating heart being stitched into the body of his empire. "If anyone but me can open it," he told them, "I'll burn the whole thing down." Michael wasn't always like that, at least not entirely. Once, he'd been a sharp, hungry real estate broker from the South Side with a chip on his shoulder and a dream too big for his paycheck. But success had twisted him. Every deal, every dollar, added another layer of armor. Now, the man who had started with nothing had built a fortress so thick that not even truth could get through. Down in the basement of that same tower, James Liam scrubbed marble floors under flickering fluorescent lights. His back ached, his hands cracked from bleach, but he never complained. 18 years on the night shift had taught him patience and how to go unseen. His daughter, Linda, often waited in the corner, doing homework beside the janitor's cart. She didn't talk much. She didn't need to. Linda saw patterns in everything, numbers, locks, routes through the building. Her teachers said she had a memory like film, every detail burned in perfect focus. No one noticed. Not the tenants. Not the managers. Certainly not Michael William. But one day, That gift would turn the invisible girl into the only person who could shatter his unbreakable world. Friday nights at the Williams Center were reserved for power. The penthouse gleamed with golden light and expensive laughter, jazz humming low beneath the sound of ice clinking in crystal glasses. Chicago's elite filled the room. Investors in tailored suits, socialites in designer gowns, everyone orbiting around one man, Michael William. He stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, scotch in hand, the city sparkling beneath him like proof of his genius. "You know," he said, voice slick with confidence and whiskey, "I don't trust banks. Never have. That's why I keep everything important right here." He tapped the glass wall behind him where the massive Vaultex X9 safe loomed like an art piece, smooth, silver, silent. The crowd laughed politely. Someone asked if it was true that even a manufacturer couldn't open it. Michael grinned, his eyes glassy. "Damn right. They built it, but I'm the only one who knows the code. Not written anywhere. Not stored in any file. Just up here." He tapped his temple, smirking. Even the CIA couldn't get in. The room erupted in laughter. Cameras flashed. The jazz band swelled. For Michael, this was worship, his guests clapping for his paranoia, disguised as brilliance. Across the marble hallway, James Liam mopped quietly, invisible as ever. His daughter Linda waited nearby, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketchbook in her lap. From where she sat, she could see everything through the half-open door, the glittering crowd, the vault, and Michael swaggering toward it. "Tell you what," Michael said, raising his glass. "If I ever forget the combination, I'll give $100 million to whoever can open it." He let the words hang, drunk with his own arrogance. "Hell, I'd pay just to see someone try." More laughter, more champagne. Then, as if to prove his point, he spun the dial on the safe. Left twice, right once, stop, left again, right once more. The movements were smooth but sloppy, the rhythm of someone who'd done it too many times to think. The final click echoed like a heartbeat. The vault opened. Inside, cash gleamed under soft lights, bundles stacked like bricks, papers, and a small flash drive that glinted like a secret. No one noticed the girl in the hallway. But Linda saw everything, every number, every turn, and remembered. 2 weeks after that glittering Friday night, the laughter in the Williams Center was gone. The jazz had faded. The champagne had turned to silence. And Michael William, the man who never forgot anything, couldn't remember the numbers. It happened after a 20-hour workday and too many drinks. A failed merger. A humiliating call with investors. He stood before his gleaming Vaultex X9, sweat gathering at his collar, turning the dial again and again. Left, right, left. Clicks that went nowhere. "Come on," he muttered, slamming his palm against the steel. "It's 60, then 12, then..." His voice broke. The dial refused to obey. The safe remained cold, blank, unreadable. By midnight, he had called everyone, his assistant, a locksmith, the Swiss manufacturer. "It's impossible," the engineer told him over the phone, voice trembling. "There's no override. You designed it that way, remember?" That word, remember, burned like acid. By morning, the office was chaos. Michael barked orders, cursed at his staff, and fired 2 security heads. He smashed a whiskey glass against the wall when a technician failed to make progress. "You're all useless," he shouted. "You don't understand what's in there." Rumors spread like smoke through the city. The Tribune ran a quiet headline. William Enterprises faces turbulence amid merger collapse. Stock prices dipped. Investors started pulling calls. For the first time in a decade, Michael felt something he hadn't felt since the days he'd slept on a friend's couch, fear. Downstairs, life went on. James Liam wiped down the same marble floors, humming softly under his breath. Linda sat near the janitor's cart, working through her math homework by the glow of a vending machine. Between problems, she'd glance up and smile at her father, proud just to be near him. James would pause sometimes, leaning on his mop, looking at her, the same way he used to look at her mother before the sickness took her. He didn't have much, but he had Linda, and that was enough. Above them, 80 floors higher, Michael William paced his penthouse like a trapped animal. His reflection flickered in the darkened glass. a man cornered by his own design. And somewhere deep inside him, the boast that had once been a joke began to rise again. Thunder rolled over Chicago like the growl of something ancient and angry. Rain slammed against the glass of the Williams Center, streaking down the windows in violent rivers. Inside, on the 80th floor, Michael Williams stood barefoot in his office, soaked in whiskey and regret. The lights flickered as wind howled through the gaps in the high-rise frame. He faced the Voltex X9 again, his masterpiece, his prison. His reflection stared back at him from its gleaming surface, pale and furious. "Open," he bellowed, twisting the dial with shaking hands. "Come on. 60, 12, 91, damn it." The numbers were wrong again. They were always wrong. He pounded his fist against the steel until his knuckles split. The storm outside seemed to answer him, thunder booming so loud the windows trembled. Behind him, a small crowd had gathered, a few assistants, 2 security guards, a technician clutching a clipboard. No one spoke. They just watched the billionaire unravel. Michael turned, wild-eyed, his voice cracking with rage. "If anyone can open this thing, anyone, the 100 million is theirs. You hear me? 100 million. The room went still. No one dared breathe. Down the hall, the janitorial crew was finishing their rounds. James Liam froze mid-swipe when he heard the shouting. His daughter Linda stood beside him, her backpack hanging from one shoulder. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, I can open it." James blinked. "Linda, no." His hand tightened on the mop handle. "Sweetheart, we don't get involved in rich men's problems. We clean their messes, that's all." "But I know how," she insisted, eyes locked on the door to the penthouse. "I saw him do it. I remember every number." James shook his head, fear in his voice now. "Please, don't even think about it." But Linda didn't look away. The thunder outside was nothing compared to the quiet certainty building inside her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of being seen. The room was heavy with the sound of rain and humiliation. Michael Williams stood before his useless vault, his voice raw from shouting, his pride bleeding out onto the marble floor. Behind him, his staff stood motionless, caught between fear and fascination. Then a small voice cut through the chaos. "Mr. William," Linda said quietly, stepping out from the hall shadow. "I can open it." Every head turned. The janitor's daughter stood there, soaked from the rain she'd run through, her father close behind her. She looked impossibly small against the towering safe and the billionaire who owned it. Michael blinked, then laughed, a sharp, bitter laugh that filled the room. "You," he sneered. "You think this is a game, kid? You don't even know what a million looks like." James stepped forward, desperate. "Sir, she didn't mean." But Linda didn't back down. "I know what 100 million looks like," she said softly, her voice steady now. "And I know how to open your safe." The room erupted in murmurs. A security guard whispered, "Let her try." Someone else chuckled. The tension twisted into spectacle, the kind of moment people watch just to see someone fail. Michael smirked, savoring the attention. "Fine, go ahead," he said, waving her forward with exaggerated grace. "Let the janitor's little girl have her fun." Linda stepped closer. Her heartbeat was a drum in her ears. The metal dial gleamed under the fluorescent light, cold and unyielding. She took a breath, shut her eyes, and saw it all again. The night of the party, the way his fingers had moved, the rhythm of his arrogance. Left 2 turns to 60. Right 1 to 12. Left again to 91. Right to 27. Click. The sound was small, almost polite. But in that moment, it was the loudest sound in Chicago. The door of the uncrackable vault swung open. Stacks of cash and documents glowed beneath the soft light. Silence. Then gasps. Then shouting. And Michael Williams' empire, built on power, greed, and ego, began to crumble. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. The safe hung open like a wound in the wall. The impossible made real by a 14-year-old girl in hand-me-down sneakers. Then Michael Williams snapped. "That's impossible," he shouted, face flushing crimson. "You cheated. You little thief." He stumbled toward the vault, eyes wild, spittle flying with every word. "You think you can walk in here and steal from me?" You and your janitor father. James stepped in front of his daughter, trembling but firm. Sir, she didn't steal anything. She just opened what you asked. Michael's laughter cracked into rage. Don't lie to me, he roared. You people are all the same, always looking for a handout. The room shifted. Some of his employees turned away. Others froze, phones in their hands, recording silently. A few dared to whisper, Jesus, Mike, stop. But he didn't. He lunged. James shoved Linda behind him as Michael's hand connected with his shoulder, sending him stumbling. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone screamed. Security hesitated, too afraid of losing their jobs to intervene. Linda's small voice broke through the chaos. You promised, Mr. William, she said, trembling. You said if anyone opened it. Shut up, Michael barked, pointing at her. You think you can humiliate me in my own building? The cameras caught it all. The open vault, the blood on Michael's knuckles, the trembling janitor shielding his daughter. The moment power lost control. By the next morning, the footage was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, the evening news. The headline flashed across America. Billionaire assaults janitor's daughter after $100 million challenge. The hashtag spread faster than wildfire. Hashtag justice for Linda. Hashtag pay her $100 million. Hashtag the safe that broke Chicago. Within hours, Michael William went from untouchable mogul to public enemy number one. The world had seen everything. The arrogance, the violence, the truth. And for the first time in his life, Michael couldn't buy silence. The story had escaped the skyscraper. And this time it wasn't his. By dawn, Chicago was awake and furious. The video of Michael Williams' outburst had spread across every major platform overnight. News anchors replayed the moment again and again. The trembling girl, the open vault, the billionaire's fist slamming forward. Hashtags flooded timelines. Hashtag justice for Linda. Hashtag pay her $100 million. Hashtag the safe that broke Chicago, as millions demanded answers. By 8 a.m., CNN was running live coverage outside the Williams Center. Civil rights groups issued statements condemning the assault, calling it a portrait of privilege unmasked. Protesters began gathering near the plaza with homemade signs reading, "Pay the girl," and "Accountability has no price tag." Inside the boardroom, chaos reigned. Michael's phone rang nonstop. Lawyers, investors, PR agents, all shouting over each other. His company's stock plunged nearly 20% by midday. The board called an emergency meeting. One director, pale and furious, threw a printed headline across the table. William Empire crumbles after viral scandal. And then came the second wave, the one no one saw coming. Federal investigators, reviewing the viral footage, noticed something in the corner of the frame. Stacks of documents inside the open safe. Paper trails, account numbers, names. Within hours, a quiet call went out from the SEC to the FBI Chicago field office. By noon, a team of agents was already drafting warrants. Meanwhile, on the south side, life looked painfully ordinary. In a one-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper, James Liam poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs while his daughter flipped pancakes. Reporters crowded outside the building, their cameras pointed at the small window. You don't have to go to school today, James said quietly, his voice warm with worry. They're going to talk, baby. They're going to twist it. Linda looked up from her plate. I didn't do anything wrong, Dad. I know, he sighed. But men like him, they don't lose easy. Linda smiled faintly. Then maybe it's about time they did. Outside, the sky rumbled, the echo of last night's storm still hanging in the air. Across town, black SUVs rolled up to the Williams Center. Men in navy jackets stepped out, badges flashing under the gray light. The fall of a billionaire had officially begun. The headlines came first, then the handcuffs. 2 weeks after the storm, federal agents walked Michael William out of the Williams Center in a gray suit that looked suddenly too big for him. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. Inside his penthouse, the once impenetrable vault stood empty, its secrets already boxed, tagged, and hauled away as evidence. Fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, offshore accounts. Every skeleton he'd hidden was now public record. The empire he'd built on intimidation and greed had collapsed overnight, leaving behind only glass, steel, and silence. Down on the south side, James and Linda Liam sat in the lobby of a downtown law office. Clutching paper cups of coffee they were too nervous to drink. A pro bono team of attorneys and community advocates had taken up their case. They promised to fight for Michael's public offer, the one he'd made to the world. Open this safe, and the $100 million is yours. When the news broke that the offer would likely be upheld, the city erupted again. This time, in celebration. Days later, James and Linda appeared on Good Morning America. Cameras, lights, and the smell of studio coffee filled the air. The host smiled warmly. "Linda, when you opened that safe, did you know what it would start?" Linda shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't do it for money," she said. "I just remembered." The audience fell silent. Somewhere, in a detention center outside the city, Michael William watched the same interview on a flickering TV. He didn't see the cameras, or the hosts, or the applause. All he saw was the truth staring back at him. A young girl who remembered what he forgot. That power doesn't make you untouchable. Outside the studio, the morning air was cool and bright. Linda and her father stepped onto the sidewalk, the city stretching before them. For once, they weren't invisible. Arrogance builds walls. Courage breaks them. And one girl's memory had become the key that unlocked justice. Trust you love the story. Don't stop supporting us. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Thank you.